Hello, welcome to my studio. This is your instructor Linda, and in this video I'm going to be discussing quilling combs and quilling comb systems. I'll be going over the advantages, disadvantages, limitations for all of the systems. Hopefully by the end of this video you will be armed with the information that you need to make a decision on which quilling system is most appropriate for you. So I'll start with the first quilling system. Over 30 years ago, when I first started quilling, as a student, money was simply not something that I had. So I went to the dollar store, picked up a hair comb for 25 cents, and started quilling on that. So that is the first quilling system, the dollar store or grocery store hair comb. Very inexpensive, easy to start, and easy to access. Now since then, I've progressed further in my career, and I have more expendable money to spend on my crafting and hobbies. I have since then become honestly a quilling snob and enjoy using my high quality quilling tools that are made specifically for quilling. So the other two quilling systems that I'm going to discuss all have four things in common. They have a comb with a wide spacing, a narrow spacing, as well as one with a single row and with a double row. So let's start off with the least expensive and versatile alternative for professional or high quality quilling. In this system, you will need these two combs here. This particular comb is 25 centimeters in length. You can get the same version in the 25 centimeter length as well. Exactly the same thing. One is just longer and one is shorter. So why would you want to consider the longer versus the shorter? Well, the shorter is least expensive, and for most projects of sizes that are common, would certainly be able to be quilled on that particular comb. The longer comb does allow you for longer, bigger projects, as it has a larger, what we call effective working length. So if you take a look at this comb, the full length of the comb from end to end is 25 centimeters. However, because in this comb you divide half the comb into wide spacing and you divide the other half of the comb into narrow spacing, your effective working length is actually only 12 centimeters. So any project that is larger than that, you would either need to make the elements in pieces and connect them, or get a longer comb. This one is a single row comb. There's only one row going across, and it can be used for things like wheat ears, Copenhagens, lots of different things. The nice thing about this comb is the teeth are made of steel and it is very strong. And that's actually kind of important because when you're quilling on a hair comb or a dollar stone comb, the teeth actually move around, which means that when you're pulling the quilling elements, you may end up with inconsistent loops, some that are bigger and some that are smaller, depending on how the comb bends when you're quilling. So this one won't bend, and unless you do something horrible to it, like drop it on the floor and step on it, it probably will not move. So the other comb that you need is the same thing. Narrow spacing on one side, wide spacing on the other. This one, however, has a double row. One row, two rows. This is very useful for doing things like brickwork, if you're making borders for ponds, for example, in your projects, or making sprigs. You can also use this particular comb, because the teeth of the comb is wider, for doing a type of quilling called spruer work. In spruer work, you're actually using not the narrow part of the comb, but you're actually weaving on the wide set of the comb. So in this system, you need two combs, the single row, and the double row with the wide teeth. So obviously, this system is least expensive. You only need 2 combs to get started. What are the limitations of this particular comb? Well, because the comb is divided half and half for the wide and the narrow, you have a smaller effective working length. A smaller effective working length means that if you're doing larger, more complex projects, like a wreath, for example, you will have to do the wreath in parts and connect it together in order to get the full length that you require. Whenever you're connecting parts or gluing in quilling, you potentially have the problem of getting kinks or distortions, and as well as excess thickness and bulk in the areas that you connect. So having the ability to do your quilling element on one long strip is to your advantage. Okay, so let's go to the deluxe quilling system with multiple combs. So to do the same tasks that was done on the 2 combs that I just put away, you actually need 5 combs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This little one is used to do spooler work. So you have the wide needles that you can use for weaving and making the elements. Now, if you don't do spooler work that often or do not intend to, you can simply ignore that particular comb and get these 4 here. So if we look at this particular comb, like the other one, it is 25 centimeters and it is numbered on both sides. If we compare the numbering on this comb versus this comb, what you'll notice that on this comb, the numbers have the 0 in the center, and the numbers get larger as you go away from the 0. Same on both sides. On this comb, the 2 sides are actually numbered differently. This side has the 0 starting in the center of the comb, with the numbers getting larger as you get towards the end. However, on the other side, you have the number starting at 1 on the right-hand side, getting larger as you go towards the left. The advantage of having 2 different numbering systems is it does make it easier for you to keep track of your loops in your projects for the various different types of projects. This numbering with 0 at the bottom and going up to the top is very handy when you're keeping track of an element called the wheat ear, as you can count directly with the numbers. In this particular comb, you have to go and you have to remember that your numbers are getting smaller. So a little bit easier to count in this particular comb. Not only that, because this comb is much longer, it is a 24 centimeter effective working length, you can make very large projects in one pass or very few passes. Here is the same comb in the double comb system. So numbered the same way with the 0 in the center and getting larger on one side. And with the numbers starting at number 1 here and getting larger as you go towards the left-hand side. This comb is made for a right-handed user. So holding in your left hand and looping with your right. If you are a left-handed user, this comb is available in the left-handed version, which is meant to be held with the left hand. The numbers are reversed in that particular comb. You start with the 1 at the bottom here, and you go up to the largest number, going from left to right. So here is the same comb with narrower spacing. The teeth are much closer together. This particular comb has an effective working length of 21.5 centimeters, with the full comb being 22 centimeters. Here is the same equivalent in the narrow spacing double comb. Now, in theory, you can choose just these two combs or just these two combs. You would not be able to have as many options in terms of distances when you're looping. If you have this comb, you can simply get wider loops by skipping combs, teeth. So rather than going 1, 2, 3, 4, you can go 2, 4, 6, 8. So if you can skip using the narrower space comb, why would you need this bigger comb? And it has to do with the size of the teeth. This particular one, the teeth are narrower spaced, and not only that, the actual pins on the comb are smaller as well. So if you're doing a wider spacing project on the smaller comb, and if you have a tight hand or tend to pull very hard when you wrap your paper around the comb, you will get very kinked or small shaped tipped quilling elements. When you have the larger comb, it does tend to allow for harder pulling without squishing or flattening your elements. So I'm going to discuss also a specific type of comb that can be added to either the first system or the second system. It tends to be more for an intermediate user and is particularly useful for doing a type of quilling element called a vortex coil. You can also use it as a regular comb, albeit the spacing is very narrow, so your project will be very, very tiny. But this is the comb that we would use for that. So this is a vortex comb. And this vortex comb has wider spacing with bigger pins on one side and narrower spacing with smaller pins on the other side. So there we go. That's the basics of the 3 different types of quilling comb systems that you can use for quilling. So let me summarize that. First way, least expensive, most accessible. Not terribly high quality, unfortunately, but it will do if you're just starting out. And that is just to simply use a hair comb. To get the double comb, I would purchase 2 of the same hair comb. Do make sure that they're flat. Glue or tape them together to get your double row comb, and away you go. If you want to quill a little bit more professionally, and you do have the ability to purchase nicer equipment, I recommend doing this double comb system with the wide and the narrow on one side with the wider teeth, and the double row in the same version. If you want to have lots and lots of options to be able to specify and target certain types of quilling elements, then I recommend this last quilling system, which requires 5 combs. If you were to compare the 2 different systems, the 5 comb system versus the 2 comb system, I would compare it to working in the kitchen. In this system, you have one sharp kitchen knife that will pretty much do anything and everything for you. Not a specialist, but versatile. For chefs that are a little bit more finicky or like having their different tools, they will have your kitchen knife, your butter knife, your bread knife, your fillet knife. So all of these different knives will give you the ability to do one specific task very well. And overall, your projects or your techniques are a little bit easier to perform when you have a specific tool that is specialized for that task. The other thing as well that I would like to mention as well is the 4-comb system. The teeth on the comb are very small. And what that means that the teeth are very small and short is when you're looping your paper, you can loop your paper more easily without having that wider teeth obstructing your looping, which could potentially kink, rip, tear, or otherwise make your project more frustrating to do. So, easy, the dollar store comb system, the double comb system, or the 5 comb system. Pick the one according to what you are needing out of your project and what your budget allows. So hopefully this video was informative, and I will see you in the next video.